Their relationship was sometimes stormy and always of interest to the tabloid press, which often seemed to know more than it should about the romance of Sir Paul McCartney and Heather Mills. In her evidence to the Leveson inquiry, Heather Mills explained how, after one breakup, a journalist had called to talk about a private voicemail which Sir Paul had left for her.
He said, "Look, Heather, we've heard that you and Paul have had an argument, and I've just heard a message of him singing on the phone to you, asking for forgiveness." And I said, "There is no way that you could know that unless you've been listening to my messages."
The contact who telephoned Heather Mills was not from the Daily Mirror, but subsequently the Mirror's then editor, Piers wrote an article in which he said he'd heard such a voicemail message. In evidence to the inquiry last December, Mr Morgan refused to say how he'd come to hear the tape. So the obvious question today to Heather Mills.
Did you authorise Mr Morgan to access your voicemail?
Never.
Did you authorise Mr Morgan to listen to your voicemail?
Never, ever.
From the PR consultant Max Clifford, who's both fed the tabloid press with scoops and protected his celebrity clients from scoops, a plea for much better protection for ordinary people who become victims of the press.
Now, I've known of dozens and dozens of examples of people whose lives have been damaged, destroyed by excessive media activity.
From the Daily Mail, its editor-in-chief Paul Dacre recalled to the inquiry to face and rebut renewed suggestions that the Mail on Sunday had obtained a story about the actor Hugh Grant by phone hacking.
Can you honestly be 100% certain, having looked into it, that this story was not based on information which had somehow been accessed from Mr Grant's
I can be
voicemails?
as confident as any editor, having made extensive inquiries into his newspaper's practices and held an inquiry, that phone hacking was not practiced by the Mail on Sunday or the Daily Mail.
Hugh Grant had been accused by the Mail of uttering mendacious smears when he gave evidence to the inquiry last November. In other words, of lying. But the Mail's editor refused to retract the claim.
If Mr Grant withdraws his repeated statements about the Daily Mail, I will withdraw my mendacious smears, and without hesitation, yes.
The inquiry is now sat for 40 days and heard from nearly 200 witnesses. After a short break, it will move on from considering relations between the press and the public to the press and the police. Nicholas Witchell, BBC News, at the Leveson inquiry.